Ains stands as the crowd applauds the warrior king. He remembers his entry to the Baharuth Empire's Colosseum. In the flashback, after the departure of Albedo, Ains wondered why Nazarick hadn't found the people who had Shaltir Bloodfallen entranced with a world item. Ains plans to showcase his skills to promote the benefits of adventurers under his assistance while upholding the NPC's scheme to rule the world and to make the world a utopia. Ains used the gate magic to checkpoint into Arwintar because he was concerned that his formal entrance would be met with a ceremonial welcome and that his lack of formality would be obvious. Enzach failed to notice a border crossing. The Overlord promises that Emperor Jersniv will forgive him for his friendship. Ains wants to establish a facility to provide greater training for the adventurers. Pluton Adventurer Guildmaster suggests teaching them from scratch by publicizing the idea in the Colosseum. Ains is pleased to receive such feedback and requests that Pluton continue expressing his views. Pluton tells Ains about the Warrior King and shares that he knows his fight promoter, so the two go to see him. Ains informs Pluton that he will teleport him back to Erantel, where Pluton will be picked up the next day for the meeting. When Pluton is transferred, Ains travels to Fluter Paradine to get the country reports. Still, the magician says that Jersniv was aware of his disloyalty and had restricted his access. Ains nods, and Fluter receives his gift as a Book of the Dead item. Ains gives his magical glass to Fluter to read the book. Fluter yells in utter joy by reading a paragraph to discover the knowledge he always searches for. While awkwardly pleased to assist, Ains asks for the magic glasses back because they are the only ones he has. Ains tells him that he will ascend if he learns to translate, decipher, and comprehend the text. Pluton is pleased to find Rabbit Man Maid as East. Their native countries are much far. Ains is intrigued when Osk, impressed by his recognition, explains that the sword comes from a dwarf kingdom rune factory. Rune factory is located deep within the Azerlesia mountains. Osk asks Ains if he wants to battle the warrior king directly, but Ains assures him that there will be no issue if the fight occurs. Ains also lyingly confirms that the spell he had cast killed tens of thousands of people and can only be cast once every 10 years. When Osk points out the value of this information because Ains told him about his weakness, Ains shows pridefulness as he has other spells. He lately inquires about why he would want to face the warrior king. Ains says he wants to test Gazef Stronov's strength. Then Osk decides to set up the battle. Ains swears to utilize weapons in battle and not use magic solely. Back to the present time, when he draws his weapon into the arena, the warrior king praises Osk for always keeping his word and providing him with fights that have helped him to get stronger. Warrior King, named Gojin, and Ains meets each other for the first time, with Ains telling Gojin about a previous run-in with a war troll. Ains likes Gojin and asks for his loyalty if he wins the match, and Gojin offers to eat Ains if he beats him. He makes an open lanking strike with a fire attack. Gojin strikes Ains in the back as a counter-attack, sending Ains flying. Ains is displeased that Jersniv shouted at Gojin rather than Sorcerer King. Ains informs that he switches from his staff to the blades he borrowed from Momon, and that he can inflict negative energy on impact, which decreases strength and agility. Gojin takes off his torso armor and inquires, as he is so weak, that Ains hasn't yet utilized all of his power. Ains holsters 2 stilettos to equip the third and takes hits to deal with negative energy. Gojin's use of martial arts sends him flying. Ains then arrives before him, kills Gojin with his third stiletto, and explains his strategy for preparing adventurers for exploring the unknown land. He displays his strength and encourages those who share his views to go on actual adventures. Ains revives Gojin to demonstrate his willingness to raise the dead adventurers to secure their growth. Then Ains uses his fly spell to go to Jersniv, who requests him to make a vassal state of the Baharuth Empire. As Ains departs, he asks Jersniv to submit a petition for the Empire's status as a vassal state. Meanwhile, Demiurge returns to the Great Tomb of Nazarick to speak with Ains Ul Gaun about a plan to overthrow the theocracy. Albedo informs him that Ains has left and suggested he might have a problem with the goal of global dominance. Meanwhile, Ains is looking for a diplomatic representative for the dwarves in Lake Lizardman Village to acquire their minerals and runecraft. He uses Aura as his bodyguard, and Shaltir as his bodyguard. Cositus refers Ains to Zenburu Gugu after Ains asks about the lizard man who once visited the dwarf kingdom. Zenburu Gugu inquires whether Ains is interested in peaceful negotiations because he doesn't want to repay dwarves a previous favor with ill will. Ains confirms that he would do peaceful negotiations. Later, when Shaltir reviews a list and finds that the delegation is prepared to leave, Aura questions why she is writing all the details in the diary. Shaltir says she doesn't want to make another error and put Ains in shame. She also wants to show Ains that she is useful despite only being in charge of the teleportation gate system. Then Aura thinks back to when Ains appointed her and Shaltir for the mission on Rantel. Ains told Aura that the experience was meant to help Shaltir develop as a person and learn from her mistakes. Aura tells this to Shaltir, but she is unsure how to interpret it. When Zuburu tells Ains that the envoy is prepared, Ains notices his wife holding their child close to her. Although Ains doesn't intend to kidnap the mother's child, he muses that he wouldn't mind getting one if they started producing them more frequently, given how rare they are. They start their journey and travel down into the Yggdrasil mountains, where Ains uses Create Fortress spell to construct a shelter for the night. Ains muses to himself in his chambers about runes in the New World and wonders whether a player brought technology from Yggdrasil. In the morning, Ains instructs the 5 Hanzo guards to scout the city after Zenburu escorts him to the entrance of the dwarf city. Hanzo said it had been abandoned, but someone was still working alone further ahead, so Aura went to meet him. The dwarf removes his invisibility once Aura notices him and explains that the city of Pharaoh Raidho was abandoned 3 years ago, and its inhabitants fled to Feojera. He introduces himself as Gondo Firebeard. Gondo says that the journey to Feojera is about 6 days. Ains says he is on a mission to the dwarves to negotiate trade agreements for their use of runes, which differ slightly from the symbols he is familiar with. Ains carves a rune into a stone that Gondo recognizes as Lagu, a mid-tier rune. As they emerge from the tunnel, Gondo explains that the rise of tier magic caused a sharp fall in runecraft. Gondo hails from a family of runesmiths because, although tier magic was simpler to learn and required less time to master, runecraft was more valuable to produce. Given that many magical objects require pricey components and that Gondo knows that runecraft would be extremely useful if restored, Ains is glad to hear it. Although Gondo did not inherit his father's ability with runes, he is determined to preserve it for future generations. At the same time, the other dwarves are frequently inebriated with sorrow. Ains is moved by Gondo's desire to uphold his father's illustrious reputation and offers Gondo his support in exchange for Gondo's service to him. Gondo gladly accepts the offer. Gondo inquires if they are Quagoa, the demi-humans who forced the dwarves to flee the city. Ains instructs them to capture them out of curiosity. Shaltir succeeds with her spell, Mass Hold Species, after devising a strategy with the Hanzos. The Hanzos confirm that all the Quagoa were taken. Ains instructs Shaltir to obtain intelligence from the Quagoa. Then Shaltir uses another spell, Charm Species, and their leader cooperates. Shaltir is offended by the Quagoa when he calls Ains her slave, but Ains intervenes to maintain control. Shaltir asks about the Quagoa's purpose in the deserted city. They were working for their clan lord, Pe Riruro. They explained that they were to murder any dwarves that tried to flee the city up north after the attack on their main city. Then Quagora's leader said about how his people found a shortcut around the great rift that led to the city and how the stronghold defending the connecting bridge would soon be destroyed, eradicating his people. Chief issues the order to seal the doors immediately because they haven't heard from any scouts. Defense mages utilize lightning magic by dwarves to hold the Quagora at bay while the dwarf troops are shutting the massive steel door. Afterward, a courier brings news of an undead at the surface entrance with information on the Quagoa. Then Ains Uelgaun introduces himself and offers data obtained for a shot at starting commercial discussions, and then he asks them if they want him to assist them. Yozu sends a messenger back to their home, but not before Death Knights charge in and slaughter his squadron. Ains is sitting with the commander in the reception room. He thinks that Death Knights must be defeated by strong Quagoa, which causes Ains to become slightly suspicious that a player may have been involved. Ains's party is retrieved by the Chief of Staff and presented to the Regency Council. Master of Caves and Mines asks Ains what he desires in trade. The commander concurs that Feojera is no longer secure because the Quagoa has discovered a way around the Great Rift. Ains requested oars and dwarven equipment, but the council was unable to provide a prompt response. Ains proposes to recover the Dwarf Kingdom's former capital of Feoberkana, startling the brewmaster to prevent its fall, a disastrous consequence. The director of food production mentions 3 danger zones between there. Ferogera, the high priest of Earth, reminds Ains there is a frost dragon nested there as well, piquing Ains' interest as the commander explains how the 8 Koa clans united into a potent army. The alluring offer raises concerns in the Forge Master's mind, which Ains verifies are valid. Ains says that he first wants to build favorable relationships with people who understand the trade. Second, Ains informs the council that he intends to invite the runesmiths to his country so that they can provide him with magical tools. The commander says the Quagoa is already upon them and tells Ains to stay in the waiting area. The councilmen are reluctant to trade with Ains because he cannot drink, but when they realize that Ains is their only hope of survival, they accede to his demands and later call to inform him of their agreement. All runesmiths in Feoberkana is turned over to Ains by the Master of Caves and Mines. Ains pledges not to allow anyone to end up like Hero and sought out fair contracts and balanced employment. The council will continue to dispatch inspectors to check on the welfare of their citizens. Gondo insists that he is never drunk and doesn't understand their passion for alcohol. Ains makes clear his request that the runesmiths relocate to his realm. Ains shows a Yggdrasil magic sword from his inventory with 20 runes inscribed onto it. Dwarves approach. Shaltir commands them to stop as they are hoarding each other in fixation, and Ains displays his well-honed silent command position. All of the present dwarves then begin to express their want to contribute to challenging themselves by creating the same type of sword, because he has faith in their enormous potential after witnessing Gondo's tears. Gondo tells Ains that he wants to pay Ains back and wants a book on rune crafting present in the royal treasury. Ains questions if he wants to steal it from there, but Gondo says it is not robbery because the country is giving up on its rune skills by letting them go. Afterward, the commander commands the gates to open. After Ains casts Mass Fly, the company is carried over the bodies and across the rift. Ains wonders why they would cut the bridge if someone powerful enough were fighting with Death Knights. Aura notices signs that the Quagoa cut the bridge as Ains begins instructing Shaltir on managing Quagoa. Still, he calms her so he can continue. Ains and company cast Breath of Titania to take precautions against a labyrinth. Ains considers his travels with Ninya and how she planned to study the Frost Dragon once he returned to Irantel, as he claims the Frost Dragon as an opponent, lamenting the terrible turn of events. Thanks for watching my anime recap. If you liked it, subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to turn on the notifications by clicking the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Leave a comment and let me know what you thought of the recap. I hope to see you all in part 3 of the series.